All right, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Carl DeNaro, and he published in June 2021 a new book, which I read through. Really a fascinating book. Title of the book is The Son of Sam and Me, The Truth About Why I Wasn't Shot by David Berkowitz. And I've researched this case in detail. I know a lot about the Process Church of the Final Judgment. I included a long chapter about them in my book, Children of the Beast. And that's kind of one of the groups that's involved or is alleged to be involved in some of these things. But Carl DeNaro was right there in the mix and really was lucky to really be here. So I'm really delighted to have him. So Carl DeNaro, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, William. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks for agreeing to the interview. You were really one of the victims of this killing spree that happened in New York City. Can you talk about your background and kind of how this whole started and what led you to write this book, The Son of Sam and Me?
Yeah, well, that's a long question, or I should say, it's a long answer. I was going into the Air Force. My due date was October 28th to report to basic training, and October 23rd, 1976, I was in a parked car with Rosemary Keenan, and we had just started making out, and my life changed forever. I didn't realize that I was shot immediately. I knew I was hurt. There was glass all over and glass shards in my hands, and we had just left the local bar that I hung out in, and when the windows were shot out, I told her to start the car up and let's get out of here. And she drove down the block, and eventually we got back to the bar that we started at. I had passed out for like 10 seconds, and when I came to again, she was in a panic because she didn't know where she was. But being it was my neighborhood, I knew exactly where we were, and I directed her back to Peck's Bar and Grill. I walked into the bar, and the doorman, who knew me, said, "You don't look too good." And I said, "I don't feel good. I think the car blew up." And with that, my long hair was holding in the blood from a head wound. So my friends, brought me to Flushing Hospital emergency room, and I walked in under my own power, which I look back and I find that kind of incredible. Certainly after the fact, knowing what actually had happened to me. I had a bullet in the back of my head, and I spent 2 hours in the emergency room. The doctors picking out bone fragments and glass fragments out of the back of my head. And then 3 months later, I had to go back to get a plate put in my head.
Right. So you had this operation. So they made you stay at home to recuperate for quite some time. You were going to go into the military. So you had to be in and out of the hospital. And what did you think happened actually that night? I mean, what do you think the first initial thing, you didn't know what happened, right?
Yeah. So like 2 hours after the shooting, a policeman asked me, he said, should I call your parents? And so my dad lived upstate. And I said, nah, yeah, my dad lives upstate. And I said, wait, what time is it? He goes, 4:00. And I'm like, God, I said, as long as I'm home by 7, my mother won't even know I was out this late. And that's when the police officer said, son, he goes, you were shot in the head. You're not going home. And that's my first recollection of knowing I was actually shot. And again, I was in a hospital for like 3 weeks, and then I was had to recuperate at my mom's house for 3 months until I went back in January of '77 to get a plate and put in the back of my head.
Right. So, and at that time, what was the kind of general feeling in New York City about why these shootings were happening?
Yeah, well, okay, I was the second victim, so of the Son of Sam shootings. The first one being July 29th, 76. So there was by the time when I was shot, there was no Son of Sam, there was no 44 caliber killer. So the police were operating under the impression that it was a drug deal. You know, being I had long hair, I did smoke pot. Um, that they just assumed it was a drug deal gone bad. I grew up in people that remember are old enough to remember New York City in 1976. The city was on the verge of bankruptcy. There was, the Bronx was burning. The crime rate was through the roof. But I have to say, in my little neighborhood, we really weren't affected by it. I mean, we knew what was going on, but again, it was a upper middle class neighborhood. We didn't have any crime like that, so I guess it was logical for the cops to think it was a drug deal. So, of course, my mother bought into the drug deal story,
Yeah.
and because she, as 20-year-old, and like I said, long hair, smoking pot, out drinking, so yeah, basically, I had to defend myself for 6 months. I kept telling the cops that it wasn't a drug deal. I don't know who shot me. I don't know why they shot me, but it certainly wasn't a drug deal. And on March 10th of 77, the police commissioner and the mayor had a press conference saying that we have a serial killer on our hands. So that was an important date for me.
So it took a while for them to get to that conclusion, right?
Yeah. So I kind of felt vindicated as of March. But like I said, like I said in my book, it opened up a whole new set of questions. It's like, all right, now it's a serial killer. So was it a random shooting? Is he going to come back and finish off the job? So it was, I guess it was a little bit of relief that I proved to my mother and the cops that it wasn't a drug deal. Like I said, now I'm dealing with a serial killer.
Right. And so then can you describe the atmosphere of New York? You said it was a high crime, but once they realized it was a serial killer, it created a kind of amount of terrorism that was really off the charts, right? Or paranoia.
Yeah. Until this press conference on March 10th, there was at that point there was five shootings that they attributed to the Son of Sam, and that's when the mayhem really started. Up to that point, there were just individual, apparently random shootings in Queens and the Bronx, and so there was no mayhem. Although the Son of Sam reign actually lasted 13 months, the real mayhem and the press really didn't start until that press conference. But from March 10th until August 10th, when they arrested David Berkowitz, it was certainly a crazy time. I witnessed it firsthand the last couple of months, because by June of 77 I was I was out and about. I started working and having a social life, and people just lived in fear.
And you kind of had some kind of infamy too as one of the surviving victims, right?
Yeah, that's that was like again. There's a few downsides to this story. I mean, the upside is I'm here talking to you today, but one of the downsides was the infamy that came with being a victim of a serial killer. I kind of, like, wherever I went, the whispers, I'd hear the whispers. That's the guy that was shot by Son of Sam. And it got to the point where it really got to be too much, and I felt like my whole personality was being pigeonholed into this victim role. So I quit my job, um, got rid of my apartment, and I moved out to California for a couple of years, and I stayed there until for 2 years, till 1980. And by that time, there was still press, but the real hubbub and buzz. Berkowitz pleaded guilty. He was in jail, and it was a lot easier to handle. Handle that infamy.
Right. And you said you're really a New York person at heart. So that was always kind of pulling you back. When you were watching this whole progression to the Berkowitz and all of the murders, and when he was arrested, you thought at that time he was the killer, right? Like you were convinced that he was just the only one. Is that true?
Yeah. Uh, I kind of got all, not kind of, I got all my news like everyone else, reading the newspapers and watching the news. I didn't have any special inside information from law enforcement. So I had, by the time they arrested Berkowitz, I had no reason to believe there was anything other than what I was reading in the paper and what the police were saying. I will say that the night that they arrested Berkowitz and they flashed his face on TV, two things went through my head. One was, he didn't look like what I would think a serial killer looks like. He didn't have the crazed eyes or anything like that. And I guess even more importantly, the person they were parading through Police Plaza didn't even look like the sketches that they were, posting in the paper and all over. It was, and everyone, even though no one really knew about a conspiracy or more than one person involved, everyone that I know said the same thing. It's like, that's not the guy. In fact, there's a photo of of the press conference when they brought Berkowitz in, and they have a big like poster size photo of the sketch that they were purporting to saying this is the guy we're looking for, and it's clearly not David Berkowitz, and that didn't go unnoticed by the public, but it didn't really gain any traction either.
Right. But those are very good reference points, those sketches, because you can still see that today, that they're not consistent with what David Berkowitz looks like. So you kind of went through that, and I think you got some money from the Victims Fund or something like that, and everything changed for you in 1987, right? When something happened, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, it was kind of like, all right, wrong place, wrong time. I got an honorable discharge from the Air Force because they had no use for somebody that was already injured, and I kind of went on with my life, just saying, all right, make lemonade when you get lemons. But in 1987, I saw a little article in the Daily News saying that this investigative reporter wrote a book on the son of Sam. So obviously I was interested, and of course I buy the book, and it's 650 page book, and I finished it in 2 days, and it blew my mind because the first 3/4 of the book explain what happened, and with in my opinion, very conclusive proof that other people were involved.
And what was it like reading your name in that book? I mean,
well, luckily for me, my name, my shooting was barely mentioned in Moriarty's book, The Ultimate Evil. And that's mostly because, it was the second. It was the second shooting. No one knew it was Son of Sam, and Rosemary and myself didn't see anything. So there was no eyewitnesses. There's really nothing to go on except the remains of the police went to the site the next morning and found the the broken auto glass. So that's how they knew. I told them what street it was on, what corner it was on, and so as far as reading my name in the book, it wasn't traumatic at all because it was very short, but it did. I guess it did give me pause for thought, saying that I'm luckily I'm alive, but I'm thrust in this huge serial killer story, and it's kind of a weird feeling. I really can't explain it. I've dealt with it much better later in life, because I've facilitated back and forth between, this is kind of cool, my 15 minutes of fame to, I 1 minute of fame is enough. I don't need 15. But here I am 45 years later,
Right.
still talking about it. So.
But you're part of something that Eve Terry did, which is kind of this unraveling of the larger picture. Because Ultimate Evil starts in Palo Alto, Minot, North Dakota. So there's these other connections. I'm assuming you didn't know a lot of the occult connections or the multi-jurisdictional connections, right? Until you read the book.
I knew almost nothing of any of that. I did save a lot of newspapers. And I still have them. And when I was writing my book, I used the newspaper clippings from the day after a shooting, the whole his Berkowitz's arrest and what have you. And there was some I see now there was some indications of satanic or occultic
Influence,
aspects to it. Yeah. But what really got it going was reading Maury Terry's book, and a little funny story. I wound up meeting Maury, I guess 6 years after the book came out, and we were doing a TV show together, a Geraldo show, and one of the first things I said to him, and obviously I shook his hand and said, "Nice to meet you." But right after that, I said, "I loved your book." But it should have been 150 pages shorter. And because if you read The Ultimate Evil, he really puts together I think a really strong case for a conspiracy and how other people were involved in the New York City shootings. But then he goes on to kind of tie in some murders in California and the Process Church with Manson, with Charles Manson's the family. I'm not saying that's not true. I'm still 45 years later. I'm still not 100% sold on that whole West Coast portion of the book. But that I told him, I said 150 pages too long because I think he certainly threw some doubt into my mind. But again, the first 500 pages I think is spot on, and further research that I continued doing after I met Maury and worked with Maury for 20 years. And then continued the research after his death in 2015. There is, to me, that it's beyond a reasonable doubt that other people were involved. We have so much Maury laid out a lot of circumstantial information, and we've, when I say we, there's myself and I don't know, a couple hundred, armchair detectives who are interested in the case and do research to this day.
Can you talk about what Maury Terry was like and what your relationship and what you thought about his personality?
Maury Terry, he's bigger than life. the way I look at it is he's one of those kind of guys, and I think every neighborhood has one. Half the town loves him, and the other half of the town can't stand him. And it all depends what perspective you're coming from. He was definitely a type A. I'm in charge. It's my way or no way. Uh, uh, I don't know if I'm making Maury sound like to be a bad guy, because he certainly wasn't. If he was your friend, you couldn't get a better friend. But if you crossed him, you probably couldn't have a worse enemy.
Yeah, he seems kind of very intense. And you guys kind of had, I think it was Harvey's you would meet every month or something in
Kennedy's.
Yeah. Kennedy's, sorry.
Yeah, Kennedy's bar on 57th Street. Yeah, that was a lot of fun, because Maury and I, when I first met him, he didn't have a computer. He didn't have the internet. Didn't have a cell phone. So we would talk. After we met, we became friends the night that we met, and we used to talk 2 or 3 times a week.
Right, and he would be angry if you didn't call him right back.
He would get really pissed off. He was, hey, Carlos, where you been? He goes, I've been trying to reach you, and it's like, I knew my phone calls with Maury usually lasted 2 to 3 hours, and at this point in the 90s, I'm married, I have a daughter, I'm working full time, and I have a social life, and if you ever had ever had a 3-year-old, getting a 2-hour block of time to yourself is difficult. But he would get really angry, and I didn't realize this until after his death. But when I started connecting with some of his other friends, that we all shared the same stories. It's like, when Maury wanted to talk to you, you better be around, because he wants to talk to you today, right now.
And he was kind of like, this was his he was very focused just on this case. Wasn't he kind of a gumshoe reporter? Or was he still, when you met him, was he still working for the newspaper? I forgot which one that was.
Well, he actually, his career, he was a writer his professional career, but he worked for IBM, and he wrote for IBM, and pretty much everything from I guess like sales brochures and company correspondence. I know we did a few speeches for IBM executives, so he was always a writer, and The Son of Sam it piqued his interest like it did most New Yorkers. When Berkowitz was arrested, that's when things really went in motion for Maury, because he just saw some things that just didn't make sense, and we've touched on some of them already. The sketches and just the timing, how a serial killer gets caught by parking in front of a fire hydrant. That alone, when you think about it, a serial killer that eluded the NYPD for 13 months gets caught parking his car in front of a fire hydrant. That just, to me, that's very weak circumstantial evidence, but it certainly doesn't make sense. But anyway, that's what got him going. Now, after he started with The Son of Sam, he later on in his career, he did work on other cases. He worked on the Atlanta child murders. He worked on the OJ case. He was writing a book on Joel Steinberg, but that was never published, and unfortunately, I wasn't even aware of it until after his death. So I was never able to ask him, like, what the deal was, with the Joel Steinberg book.
Right, and that was the guy who beat up his wife, wasn't he? Like
he not only did he beat up his wife, but he was convicted of killing his daughter.
That's right.
Through neglect, and beat her, and I think she was handcuffed to a radiator when they found her. It's a very sad story.
And so, I mean, he made these editorial decisions in his book to include all that other stuff. Did he ever regret involving Mino, to your knowledge, involving Mino in California and kind of broadening the case? Or what are your
Uh,
thoughts on that?
well, my thoughts are, bringing in North Dakota and Palo Alto was pertinent to the case, and I mean, there are, you know, for example, John Carr, who is one of the the son of Sam Carr,
One of the
who
22
lived
Sons of Hell, right?
right lived right around the corner from Berkowitz, the father. His son was stationed. His son John Carr was stationed in Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. And again, research that Maury did tied in other people, some from New York who, people in Minot were interviewed by Maury, and they were interviewed by the local police department, and at least three of them say that David Berkowitz was there, and some other people from New York were there, and apparently there was also occult rituals going on in and around the Minot Air Force Base. So, I don't think it was a stretch at all, but that's my opinion.
And Maury, I think he interviewed Berkowitz, but also I think Berkowitz was the one who turned him on to Arliss Perry, right?
Yeah, that's yeah. The story goes, and I'm not even sure what book it is, but apparently Berkowitz wrote on the side of a page in a book. I'm not even sure what book it is, saying just mentioning. I think followed. I think it's followed from North Dakota to California, stalked and murdered Arliss Perry. And the weird thing with that one, and somehow the book was taken out of prison, and the authorities got it. And yes, I'm not really sure, but what intrigued Maury about it was Arliss Perry murder happened in '74. The Son of Sam shooting started in '76. And there really there really was no press on the Arliss Perry murder in New York. As bad as it was, and as gruesome as it wasn't. I'm sure, and you could fill in the audience on this. I'm sure the Palo Alto area. There was quite a few stories on Arliss Perry, because it was a murder, a ritualistic murder happening in a church. It's pretty big news, but again, how would Berkowitz know about this? That was like Maury's big question. So he thought there was a tie to it.
And that memorial chapel where she was murdered is really the very epicenter of Stanford. It's in the quad, and it really, the whole school was built around that. So it was very, like, somebody had to, I don't know if there's choice, but it's like if you think of a university and it has an architecture or a spire or something that defines it, that was kind of the defining thing, other than the Hoover Tower, for Stanford. So is really very bold. And I told you in the pre-show, I have a connection to that. I've written articles about that. I'll post them in the show notes.
Yeah.
Even before I've interviewed people about Son of Sam, just because of the ritualistic, and then October 12th, which is Crowley's birthday, which is a weird.
It's definitely, there's definitely a lot of symbology in that murder. Just the way the body was found, what was done to her, the fact that it was Crowley's birthday. And don't get me wrong, I'm not poo-pooing this theory, but you have to realize that the Son of Sam case has a lot of tentacles, and I have chosen, because of how I was thrust into this story, I've chosen to devote almost all of my research to the actual shootings and people in the New York area that were involved. Obviously, in some cases, I had to go out of the New York area, like, as we mentioned earlier, in North Dakota. But I haven't really spent a whole lot of time with the Arliss Perry thing. I know there's, what's his name? Steve Crawford.
Right.
I mean, I know the police say it's solved,
Right.
but
it's almost like Berkowitz over again, right? Oh, we got our man. We're done. Yay.
Thank you for saying it, because that's actually where I'm going to. It's like I don't have enough time to devote to the Arliss Perry case, because I'm knee deep in the Son of Sam case, and for anyone that's interested, the Arliss Perry case is. The ending of the Arliss Perry case is probably more interesting than the beginning of it, because the police say the case is solved because the guy
shot himself.
I can't even say a suspect, because it's my understanding they didn't have an arrest warrant. They had a search warrant, and this is 40 years after the murder. So I'm not really sure. And he was, he was a security guard the night that Arliss was murdered, and it took 40 years for them to come talk to him.
And he had a copy of The Ultimate Evil in his apartment too. So.
Well, that's what they said. That's what I believe it was the police chief said. In a box in his closet, he had a copy of. But you know what? And again, I'm not poo-pooing it, but Maury Terry's The Ultimate Evil was. I think was in its 5th edition. It was a bestseller. So I have 3 copies here. So that that doesn't make me a suspect in anything.
Right. I think the most recent edition is 2021. I was just looking at it on Amazon, and it's got 689 5-star reviews.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, Josh Zeman, who did the Sons of Sam Netflix documentary, he got the book reprinted. It's been out of print since, I believe, 2004. So he wrote a new introduction, and basically, I've read the introduction. It's basically an introduction to the Sons of Sam Netflix documentary. The rest of the book is the same book. That Maury Terry wrote, the last edition. I believe it's the 5th edition.
Right. And
the good news is you can get it for $15 instead of $800 on the internet.
The Kindle price right now is $3.99. That's very reasonable for a 700-page book.
It is. I might even have to buy the audio version, because I'm finding it a lot easier when I'm working. Doing my regular day job, I wind up listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff, and that might be a bad idea, because sitting down reading The Ultimate Evil for the 15th time, I just tend to skim over it, because I've read it so many times and I'm so familiar with it. But that might not be a bad idea.
And he gave you a name for your research group, though. It's something Irregulars, right? Isn't that it?
Yeah, he kind of nicknamed us the Pine Street Irregulars. Obviously, Pine Street is a street that David Berkowitz lived on, and it was a play on the Sherlock Holmes. I'm not a fan of Sherlock Holmes, so I don't fully understand the joke, but it's apparently Sherlock Holmes had some kind of something. Irregulars, his research group or his investigative group.
But that was really you. I mean, you've done that in your book. You lay out the police version of events and then your research into what really happened. Can you talk about the distinctions between?
Sure. That believe it or not, that kind of came by mistake. I wanted to write a book. My daughter did a short film on me. Basically, the night I was shot to the day we found out it was the serial killer. And she was a film student in Brooklyn College, and she, to write her script, she interviewed me extensively, and she asked me questions that I don't think anyone ever asked me, and the answers were foreign to me. And it really got me thinking. And by the time she was done, by the time she made her movie, she convinced me that I had a story to tell. So I started writing, and I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to be a Son of Sam book. I wanted it to be, a Son of Sam survivor story. That, my life, 45 years being involved one way or another in the Son of Sam investigation. And after I got through my introduction, which I think is probably the best part of the book, or that's the part I like the best anyway, just describing who I was, how I was, back when I was 20 years old, I realized that how can I explain to people my relationship with Maury Terry, the whole Son of Sam thing, without explaining Son of Sam? So I started writing, and I felt like I was just like writing like a newspaper article going, and this is what happened. I said, how else can I explain, these supposedly random shootings that were happening like every 2 or 3 months, without actually explaining the Son of Sam story. So I came up with this idea of let me write it, each shooting, and explain it as it was explained to me via newspapers and the police and the 6 o'clock news. So that's what I did. And interspersed, I talk about my feelings and again my relationship with Maury. You have to realize that I went through this whole thing without knowing Maury. I didn't meet Maury until 1994. And then, so after I went through all the shootings, and I kind of go back and revisit each of the shootings and point out, obviously I don't bore the reader with the same exact story, but I go through each of the shootings using the information that we as a group have come up with since the incident, and also pointing out different clues that I believe the police missed or just ignored.
Right. So you go in detail on that. I mean, there's a lot of information in this book, a lot of new information, stuff that I learned that I didn't know. I think it's also your relationship with Maury Terry. Is there anything, we're at almost at 40 minutes. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up?
No,
I mean, it's a great book for your first effort. I highly recommend this book.
I hope people buy the book. It's available through Amazon and the publisher's Wild Blue Press. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my new friend Brian Whitney, who helped me write this. Believe me, it's all me. When you read it and you listen to this interview, you're gonna see that I wrote it. But Brian was very good at capturing the essence of me, the way I talk, the way I explain things, and putting it into a readable book.
Right. And I mean, right now it has 76 5-star ratings, and it is on Amazon. And Brian, and your daughter too deserves some kudos too for getting you to write it, right?
Oh yes, so she's cool yeah, she's my inspiration.
And do you have social media or anything you'd like to share if people want to reach out to you?
Yes. I'll give you my email address. It's cdx the number 2 us@yahoo.com.
Gotcha.
I do have an email that's in the book, but for some reason it's not working. And to be quite honest with you, I've gotten like 10 messages. I get more messages through the email I just gave you. I've gotten like 10 messages on that email, so I haven't even try to figure out why it's not working right. But you can contact me there, and of course I'm on Facebook, so you can always look me up. If you Google my name, I'm all over the place. Yeah, I'm very easy to find. Right. I don't know if that's good or bad, but
one more question: what did you think about the Sons of Sam documentary? Were you a fan, or did you have reservations or criticisms of it? Did you watch it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay. The first thing is I'm very glad that it was made, because it was the first time a documentary about the Son of Sam was made where we didn't have to run interference with naysayers, and for the most part, I'm talking about law enforcement. For years, Maury, myself, and other people just did battle with the NYPD. Trying to get out the information about other people being involved, and then being on the same show as the NYPD, and like Joe Coffey, Joe Borelli saying that Maury Terry's he's just a crazy conspiracist. Carl doesn't know what he's talking about. He didn't see anything. It's all garbage. We got our man. He's in jail. Case closed. This is the first time that Joe Borelli was on the documentary, and based on all the information that Josh Seaman put in the documentary, Joe Borelli didn't really come off looking all that sure about himself. So that part was good. On the negative side, if I was doing that film, I wouldn't have made it as dreary as it seems. Like Maury Terry was not a hermit. That he definitely had some physical issues. I didn't see him for the last 5 years. All that part's true. I'm just not sure it was all that important to the story. But with that said, you have to realize art, writing a book, making a movie, making a documentary is very subjective. And when it's your movie, you get to do it the way you want to do it. So I have no complaints to Josh Seaman. I would have done it different, but so would everyone else. So overall, I would give it I don't know, a 9 out of 10.
Pretty good. And at the very end, there's that sequence with Crawford where the police are there going to arrest him for Arliss Perry, whatever the search warrant. So really interesting. It's great to talk with you, Carl DeNaro. Really appreciate your time. Again, the title of the book is The Son of Sam and Me, The Truth About Why I Wasn't Shot by David Berkowitz. Can be found on Amazon with 76 5-star reviews right now. Thanks so much for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Stay there.